President Buhari tasked African leaders to recommit to massive agricultural production for food security.
Fuel scarcity. House of Representatives asks security agencies to fish out economic saboteurs.
New Institute for Agricultural Equipment opens in Lafia.
Will train in Picho and to teach farmers how to use the machines that will be produced in that institute.
And Good Morning Nigeria today takes a look at the rejection of local government autonomy under the current constitutional amendment process.
The recent development where about 27 state houses of assembly rejected two bills that seek to amend the 1999 constitution toward giving financial and legislative autonomy to local governments across the country after its passage by the Senate has been a source of worry to many Nigerians. And this is because it is believed that the passage of the bill will accelerate rural development and extend dividend of democracy to the average Nigerian on the street.
It should be recalled that the quest for local government administration in the way that grants them autonomy has been a recurring issue. And of course, the struggle has thrown up various reforms, including the 1976 landmark reforms of the local government system aimed at democratizing that level of governance.
Now, despite the reform measures, the states have continued to maintain strong grip of control over local government's arbitrary dissolution of elected local government councils for varying political reasons.
Well, the existence of local government as a tier of administration in Nigeria is recognized by the constitutional provision in 1999. And of course, this is on account of the system of administration that the entire country runs. Take a look, for instance, at Section 7 of the 1999 Constitution, which prescribes that the system of a democratically elected local government system is hereby guaranteed.
Of course, the central or federal government and other territorial sub-units governments, which may be variously called states, regions, provinces, republics, unions, among others, have constitutional backing, making it the third tier of government.
Yes, and here, as I just said a while ago, if you take a look again at the clear provisions of the 1999 Constitution, namely Section 7, we have embedded in there the guarantee of democratically elected governments for the tier of government known as the, of course, local administration. And obviously, we haven't had quite some joy with the observance of that provision in the Constitution.
Well said, Kingsley. And, you know, there are suggestions that the local government, you know, should not be a tier of government, despite what the Constitution says. And that's why we shall be taking a look at what the fundamental law of the land is all about and the way we can actually move forward as regards the local government.
Very well said, Ian, but of course what we have seen is that there was a report some 48 hours or so ago that the state houses of assembly had made returns on the constitutional amendment process of the 44 bills that were forwarded to the state houses of assembly. 35 of them have been returned, and those 35 are being processed to the president for his assent. Now, amongst those 35, of course, is not anyone relating to autonomy for local governments. So there have been complaints about the emasculation of local governments in various parts of the country and why, for instance, we continue to have very little or no development in the hinterland of the country. And this is, of course, exacerbated in recent years by the level of insecurity in the so-called ungoverned spaces. We shall be taking a look at matters arising from all of this and what can be done in the meantime to ensure that local governments truly function, even within limited autonomy. It's on that note we'd like to welcome you to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Kingsley Usadolo.
And I'm Ian Ray. John, thank you for joining us on today's edition of the program, which is reaching you live from the nation's capital here in Abuja. As usual, we'll start with our complimentary segments with the news highlights, and Anne Jibuna will be our guide this morning. Good morning, Anne.
Hello, Ian Ray, and good morning, Kingsley. Good morning. Here's the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has tasked African leaders to demonstrate political will and recommit themselves to massive agricultural production to meet the needs of the continent and export surpluses. Addressing participants at the second edition of the International Conference on Agriculture in Dakar, Senegal, the president insists that feeding Africa is not negotiable.
I therefore applaud the efforts of the African Development Bank to launch the Subshell Agro-Industrial Processing Zones. The Subshell Agro-Industrial Processing Zones are game changers for the structural transformation of the agricultural sector. We must ensure that we feed ourselves today, tomorrow, and well into the future. To feed Africa, we need younger male and female farmers. So the future of agriculture in Africa will depend on getting more youth into agriculture. That means we must make agriculture attractive for them.
In Africa, from Dakar, Senegal, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari is back in the country after a two-day official visit to the Republic of Senegal. The president arrived at Katsina at 11:15 Wednesday evening to begin a 5-day state visit. He was received at the Umaru Musa Yar'Adua Airport by the state governor, Aminu Bello Masari, and other senior government officials. While in the state, the president is expected to inaugurate several landmark projects executed by the state government. The Nigerian leader, however, proceeded to his ancestral home of Daura, where he was received by the paramount ruler of the emirate, Farouk Umar Farouk, and his council members. Statistics of mobile internet users in Nigeria as at 2022 is put at about 81 million, and this figure is projected to increase to 90.48 million in 2023. The federal government is not leaving anything to chance, as it is taking steps to protect internet users, most especially the young Nigerians. Both the Ministry of Aviation and the Ministry of Works and Housing also received approval for the memoranda presented to the council at its meeting.
Ensure the privacy and confidentiality of our data that we are submitting to government and other private institutions. Confidentiality of our data and security of our data is key to whatever we do.
Augmentation for the construction of Manyam, Ushongu, Lizel, Katayo, Se, Agbolegba, Oju, Ajila Road in Benue State. The second memo which he presented, which was approved, actually has to do with the headquarters, the Mabushi headquarters of the Ministry of Works.
Is one memo that contains about 3 items, one of which is the rehabilitation and reconstruction of the Hadejia airstrip, and the total sum is 7,482,074,196 naira and 56 kobo for a period of 18 months. Then there is the construction of control tower and technical building at Enugu, and is 1,973,606,141 naira and 75 kobo.
Away from the Federal Executive Council meeting, the federal government is sustaining the trajectory in promoting locally made machines and tools for agricultural revolution, as the new Agricultural Machinery Equipment Development Institute in Lafia, Nasarawa State, comes on stream. Governor Abdullahi Sule, while receiving Executive Vice Chairman of the National Agency for Science, Engineering, Infrastructure, NASENI, Professor Mohammed Haruna, commends President Muhammadu Buhari for the project.
Importantly, it will be operational.
So it is those people with biases in science, engineering, and technology field. They are what the institute will use, and they are what the institute will train in future, and to teach farmers how to use the machines that will be produced in that institute.
The House of Representatives has asked security agencies to fish out oil marketers and other economic saboteurs that may be responsible for the fuel scarcity across the country, which has persisted for months. The lawmakers also mandated the relevant House committees to conduct an investigation on the matter, just as it's resolved to invite the regulatory body in the sector for a meeting with the leadership of the House of Representatives. Sequel to a motion from Representative Leke Abejide, the House wants the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, being the sole importer of refined petroleum products, to find ways of easing the queues at filling stations. And the Senate has called on the Inspector General of Police to investigate the killing of a Catholic priest in Niger State, Reverend Father Isaac Achi, and a councillor, Saleh Alawa, in the same state.
Aware also that the late Reverend Father survived multiple attacks and was also abducted in Madala and spent days in captivity until his church members raised some ransom before he regained his freedom.
Look at the several attempts that he survived assassination. It invokes so much empathy.
Urge the Nigerian police and other relevant security agencies to carry out comprehensive investigation of these dastardly acts and to promptly arrest and prosecute the perpetrators. Condole with Bishop of Mina Diocese, Catholic faithful, and the bereaved family.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Inyere after this break. Please stay with us.
The 19th edition of the PMB Administration Scorecard Series will feature the Honorable Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Professor Isa Ali Ibrahim Pantami. Date, Thursday, 26 January 2023. Time, 10:30 a.m. Venue, National Press Center, Radio House, Abuja. The event will be broadcast live by NTA, FRCN, and VON, and streamed on the social media handles of the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture. Announcer, Mrs. Lydia Shehu Jafia, MNI, Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Nigeria is at the crossroads. Nigerians yearn for a rescuer, and the time to choose wisely is now. Who will save our fatherland? Who will rescue Nigeria? Only one man. He is battle ready, tested and trusted, capable and dependable. He is Atiku Abubakar. We call him the unifier on a rescue mission. He's detribalized, uncompromised, and ready to make Nigeria great again. Atiku is coming. Together with Ifeanyi Okowa, this team is unbeatable. This is no time for sentiment. It's time for competence. Atiku is the best option for a brighter tomorrow. Let's vote Atiku for president come 2023. Vote PDP. Power to the people. This message is sponsored by Atiku Okowa Coalition, Edo State.
Introducing an all-time mega offer. Get over 50% discount in the Airtel Home Broadband mega offer. Buy a router for just 10,000 naira and get up to 240 gigabyte or a MiFi for 5,000 naira and get up to 125 gigabyte bonus data. More data, more you. Reliable home broadband buy.
Airtel, the smartphone network. As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be, do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within, and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Haruna, Bisi, Akman, Unduka, how will I want to do on election day?
On election day, I go take my PVC. When I reach where I vote to, now broom I go put my hand for Tinubu. On election day, I go take my PVC. When I reach where I vote to, now broom I go put my hand for Tinubu.
People of Nigeria, make we all come out on election day and vote Asiwaju Bola Tinubu as president. Make Nigeria for better. Make you put your hand for APC, the party where show broom. Not forget now broom you go put your hand in. Bam!
On election day, I go take my PVC. When I reach where I vote to, now broom I go put my hand for Tinubu.
Today, we're here to tell you that while we may not be there yet, our military and other security agencies have succeeded and are succeeding in substantially restoring security across the nation. As far as the daunting security challenges we face are concerned, we can tell you that the worst is over. And never again will terrorists and bandits and their cohorts hold sway in our country.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
As Nigeria's non-oil export continues to witness unique growth, development experts want all tiers of government to give more attention to manufacturing. Let's join Kunle Adeyeye for details.
With the diversification agenda on course, Nigeria's non-oil export sector has remained active, contributing significantly to the gross domestic products. Products from Nigeria now compete at international markets, courtesy agencies of government saddled with the responsibility of promoting Nigerian goods. Some exporters and investors are advocating for improvements in production.
We do a lot of export into Nigeria. We know the process and we know the challenges we do face. And we have, and then even we bring things out of Nigeria and we know the challenges we do face. So if they make these things easy from the logistics on the road, from the factory or from the farm to the port, and the process in the port is easy. And those are the things that we need to look at so that you can export your things through a body who can generate funds for the government.
More formal trade will come on board. People will formalize trade because now they are confident, and they don't. And with our export traders, it's not even easier. Because one of the things export traders is battling is payment. How do I get my payment when I even give you my goods in the warehouse? But now you can put there. So a lot of people will key in now to the formal export. And that will mean that there will be increase in export volume and value. And also there will be competitiveness in terms of price.
Besides giving premium to production, they are also calling for periodic tutelage of exporters and intending ones to be able to meet up with global demands. With Business News, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thanks. That was the business news package on Good Morning Nigeria. Coming up next for us now is Newspaper Review.
All right, as usual, we have Chukudi Okoli Ugbaja with us for newspaper review. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Yere. Thank you for having me again.
Good morning to you.
Morning.
All right, so we'll start with the New Telegraph this morning, and the lead headline in the New Telegraph is Fuel Crisis, Naira redesign, plot to sabotage polls, and that is credited to Tinubu. Looking at the writers of that story, we have APC's presidential candidate indicting Buhari, that's coming from Atiku and Obi. Reps urge NNPCL to end fuel scarcity. Leave Naira redesign to next government, says Dixon, as autumn backs National Assembly on 6 months extension. Above that story, we have some other stories right here, just below the masthead of the New Telegraph this morning. We have, we're ready for 2023 census, says NPC chairman. Enugu APC moves to expel ex-Senate President Nnamani, orders. That's for anti-party activities. Homosexuality, not a crime, says Pope Francis. And Imo gunmen kill APC chairman, abduct 5 other party chieftains. And we also have presidency to Yakasai, Buhari support for Tinubu unquestionable. And details can be found on page 8 of the New Telegraph this morning. Quickly looking below the picture story of the front page of the New Telegraph, we have 2023 posts. U.S. slams visa ban on Nigerians undermining nation's democratic process. And the writer says $0.2 million seized from Nigeria-bound passenger at U.S. And that's you can find that on pages 8 and 26 of the New Telegraph. Next, we have Abia PDP to go for fresh primary as Ikone dies. His death, a big blow, says PDP. Beazu Abga, candidates suspend campaign. Kalu mourns, commiserate with Abians and state government. And finally this morning, in a red strip at the bottom of the New Telegraph, we have eating too much salt can cause behavior change. And that's according to a study. Details on page 8 of the New Telegraph. All right.
Okay, the Daily Trust newspaper leads with the tragedy that occurred in Nasarawa. And it says 38 herders killed in Nasarawa air raid. And you have 5 riders to that headline. Innocent members were killed by Air Force. That's according to Mark Ban. Drone used for shelling of pastoralists. That's attributed to Governor Sule. It is the worst evil of profiling, according to Northern Elders. Assures investigation, military mom. You can see the bodies of those who lost their lives in that unfortunate incident in Doma local government area of Nasarawa State yesterday. And immediately below that is the same story on Tinubu saying fear crisis and Naira redesign ploy to sabotage elections. We won't accept postponement and probe Ashiwaju, that's according to the PDP, presidency, CBN and APC mom. And then just below the nameplate, bandits reject 5.3 million old Naira notes in Kaduna, say deadline approaching. Bandits reject 5.3 million Naira old Naira notes in Kaduna, say deadline approaching. Used vehicles in import crashes 40% with customs valuation scheme. And very quickly also with the Blueprint newspaper, we'll take just a few of the headlines. Blueprint, Ways and Means, Nigeria risks additional 1.8 trillion Naira debt. Senate jettisons passage of 22.7 trillion Naira, adjourns till February 28th. And 10 French firms to invest in Kwara grazing reserves. How Africa can feed itself and produce surplus for export. That's according to President Buhari. PDP mourns as Abia governorship candidate Ikone dies. Now, the Blueprint is reporting 27 herders here, right at the foot of the front page, saying 27 herders killed by gunmen in Nasarawa community. I remember that a moment ago, I also read from the Daily Trust that 38 herders were killed in an air raid. But Blueprint is saying 27 herders killed by gunmen. Edo, police recover 11 pump-action rifles, arrest 135 suspects. All right, so those are some of the headlines from the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. Chukudi.
Thank you, Kingsley. I'm going straight to the 2023 census and the assurance coming from the chairman of the National Population Commission, Nasi Issaquara, that the commission is ready to conduct a believable, a credible, census exercise. Now, he was talking at the Stakeholders Summit on 2023 census held at in Makudi, Benue State. And one quickly goes to the importance of the census. I dare say that Nasi Kwara rightly quoted demographic data as being the bedrock of development. So nobody should play down this cyclical, exercise of counting the people. If you know the number of the people, let's say the young people, for instance, you will know how to design growth for them. Is the population turning elderly? The answer to that will help you drop hints that declining productivity might be the trajectory that is looming. And because the elders are important and needing care at their stage of life, necessary planning is informed to support them if you have a lot of elders in the population. I think some countries in Europe are having elderly population that might become worrisome very soon. You need young people to replace you so that population does not go on. Well, some of our people will tell you, well, that's the reason our people are able to go over there and get jobs. I don't know whether that's a good argument. Knowing the numbers is just necessary. But in our own case, maybe what we should concentrate on is hitch-free and accurate population census. Well, Nasi Kwara says there is no reason for worry there. So let us give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, the story on fuel crisis, I tried to remove attention from politicking about the statement by the APC presidential candidate would need to be looked at a bit. Fuel crisis, Naira redesign, plot to sabotage polls. That's coming from the APC presidential candidate Ahmed Tinubu, who was speaking at the MKO Abiola Stadium, Abeokuta, yesterday. Fuel scarcity, unarguably, is an ill wind that blows no one any good. So we're not going to bother too much talking about that. I don't see anyone who is let off the hook when there's fuel scarcity. But talking about the Naira redesign, we have to be careful here. If the Naira redesign is solidly backed by the governing APC, and the APC presidential candidate is kicking against it, what this would suggest to some people is that there is a disconnect between the policy of the incumbent administration and the one hoping to take over from it when they are all of the same political party. So I think that the APC would need to make sure that discordant notes don't come from people who should actually be talking about the same thing, so that misrepresentation or misinterpretation rather does not come from people, because it's things like that that journalists actually pounce on and begin to design headlines. That's my take on it.
All right, Chukudi, thanks a lot for the comments you have made on some of the headlines that we have read. Very quickly, on the claim that the fuel crisis and Naira redesign are a ploy to sabotage the elections. I'm sure some persons who are dispassionate about these matters would disagree with these claims. For how long now have we been having fuel crisis? Fuel shortages, off and on. Have we had stable fuel supply throughout the country over the past 4 or 5 years? And the answer is no. If you recall, in February last year, queues surfaced in Abuja, and ever since, they have not disappeared. They just, you have occasional respite, and this was long before Tinubu became the candidate of the APC when the presidential primaries took place here in Abuja. So let's be specific, let's be clear about this. Experts have tried to dissect and analyze why we are having this recurrent fuel scarcity. The importers will give one reason, NNPC will give another reason, the marketers will give another reason, the truckers will give another reason, the fuel depot attendants will give one reason, the fuel station attendants will give another reason. At the bottom line is that we have a supply crisis in the country, and all of this is tied up to pricing. If you recall last year, there were claims. Remember last year, early last year, this was about a year ago, when we had the toxic fuel that was imported into the country.
Yes.
Toxic. There were no elections by candidates at the time for us to know who was coming, and they said it was off-spec petrol that was brought into the country.
The scarcity has been
and then it was also said that the war in Ukraine has occasioned a disruption in supply. So how do you then we have never fully recovered from that. And of course, the bottom line, as I was going to say a moment ago, is that we have zero capacity for domestic production. Zero capacity. We are told that the refineries have been rehabilitated. Nobody, of course, has spoken about the deadlines for the completion of the refineries in terms of their rehab. They were told it was going to be sometime last year, and now it's been shifted again, I think, to the first quarter of this year, and everyone has their eyes on the Dangote refinery, which, of course, is going to have its own issues whenever it comes on stream. So I don't see how that it relates to their attempt at sabotaging the election. And then in our redesign, the CBN, we've talked about this. We also had it as part of our conversation yesterday. The CBN has not adduced any political consideration for its redesign of the Naira. Bottom line, countries change their currencies from time to time. And the last time that we had a currency redesign or the introduction of any new banknotes was at least 17 years ago. And of course, the risk of counterfeiting is there. And the gains that we have seen, people exhuming wherever they bury their Naira notes, is one of the things that ordinarily we should all applaud, going cashless and dealing with corruption. So how does that impact elections? We have also seen, in any case, that people have used cash for see and buy in the course of elections, corrupting the election process in off-season election, Ekiti, Osun, Edo, Anambra, and elsewhere. People right there on the queue, see and buy. I will show you, I will thumbprint, show you who the party I voted for, and then you will direct me to some fellow there who will hand me 5,000 or 10,000. And that's been an abuse of...
What about the allegation that PVCs are being bought?
Are being bought all over the place. So I don't think that, maybe again, one of those political statements.
All right. Yes, I agree totally with Kingsley. Honestly, it's this policies has that nothing to do with the election. Coming in, coming next month, and then in March. I think that will be all for the papers this morning. But quickly,
before we leave, because we cannot but talk about this. I know we are pressed for time. There's human life involved here. The conflicting numbers of the persons who were killed in Nasarawa.
Were they drones?
Daily Trust is reporting 38. The Blueprint is reporting 27. What we do know is that persons were killed, and they are classified now as headers in Doma. If you recall, some days ago, I did raise the point that everybody seemed to have gone silent with the abduction of 6 pupils in the Doma, local government area of Nasarawa. Now, in addition to this report of the persons being killed in the Nasarawa area, there is also on page 6 of the Daily Trust newspaper how airstrikes killed 18 vigilantes and injured 9 others in Niger State. Now, the report is indicating in part that the vigilantes were alerted to the movement of bandits towards Shiroro and Muya local government areas, where, of course, the vigilantes were then caught in the airstrike. So this is the most unfortunate development that has occurred, but we do recall, for instance, that in the war against Boko Haram in Borno State, there was an attack on a place called Ran, probably on account of faulty intelligence or belated intelligence. A number of innocent persons got killed. So in an act of war, in a situation of this nature, you do have friendly fire. I mean, sometimes
friendly fire, collateral damage. We are hoping this will be minimized. But it's inevitable.
This is a most unfortunate development.
Really unfortunate.
Of course, the military authorities will do their own review to find out what happened, what went wrong, and then, of course, the community members should also be pacified. This calls for serious peace-building efforts. It's not as if a particular community of persons, got targeted and then they were eliminated. It would appear to have been accidental, but whatever it is, it calls for serious peace building at this material time.
We need them to help us fight insurgency.
Very true. Well, as we look forward to the election come February, we just hope that some of these issues will actually be resolved, because, I mean, getting everybody on board as regards the election is key, just so we can elect the right leaders for our country. So that will be all for Newspaper Review this morning. Many thanks to Kudi Okoli-Gbaja for joining us again, and we hope to see you again tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so take a break now. When we come back, we shall get into our discussion for today. Please stay with us.
At last, the elections are here. Let's turn out en masse on election day and vote Asiwaju Bola Tinubu as President of Nigeria for a renewed hope and a better Nigeria. Vote APC, the party that shows a broom.
Operation Wild Punch covers Kaduna and Niger states. The operation was recently reorganized to also cover the critical Abuja-Kaduna Expressway, which had a defunct standby alone operation codenamed Operation Thunder Strike. Additionally, as part of the Operation Wild Punch, a subsidiary operation codenamed Operation Forest Sanity has also been launched to flush out the terrorists from the forest that straddle Kaduna and Niger states. These efforts were geared towards flushing out criminal elements from the Kaduna-Abuja Expressway and its environs. I am pleased to inform that Kaduna-Kaduna Expressway has been secured through a combined efforts of the armed forces, the police, and other security agencies.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
SportyBet sponsors coverage of the Italian Serie A.
It's Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on NTA's network service, broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios. Now, as a prompt for our conversation, which is of course on the rejection of the local government autonomy bill as part of the package on amending the constitution for a fifth time, we'll listen to this background report by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
Local government autonomy is believed to be a grassroots democracy. It is perceived as an independent entity in the sense of being able to exercise its own will in the conduct of its affairs. For a long time, the pursuit for the local government autonomy has been a Herculean task, which became a national concern. It is believed that the passage will allow the dividend of democracy trickle down to the layman on the street. Earlier, the Senate passed bills to grant full financial and administrative autonomy to local governments. The bills seek to amend the Constitution to repeal the state joint local government account and provide for a special account where all allocations due to the local government's council from the federation account and state government shall be paid. In the bill, each local government council is to create and maintain its own special account to be called local government allocation accounts, into which all the allocations will be paid. However, with the recent development where no fewer than 27 state houses of assemblies have rejected two bills that seek to amend the 1999 constitution towards giving financial and legislative autonomy to local governments across the country. The two bills were among the 44 constitution amendment bills sent by the Senate to the state houses of assemblies for their input before passing the bills to President Muhammadu Buhari for his assent. Meanwhile, the lawmakers at the state assemblies have forwarded their resolutions on 35 other constitutional amendment bills to the National Assembly for onward transmission to the President for approval. This development is not going down well for many who question what the next line of action will be. Will this not alter the progress made so far? These are some questions guests already seated on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering shortly.
Thank you, Yemi, for that background report. Now joining us in the studio to discuss constitutional amendment, local government autonomy, is Honorable Bello Alhaji Abdullahi, a former Speaker, Kogi State House of Assembly. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, also part of the conversation this morning is Mustafa Agbarere, is a legal practitioner. Agbarere, we're glad to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right, and joining us via Zoom, a regular on Good Morning Nigeria, is Professor Mohammed Kabir Issa. Professor Kabir Issa is an expert, of course, in local government and governance. He's at the Department of Local Government and Development Studies at Ahmadu Bello University. Professor Issa, you look different today. Are you in Mufti or what? I mean, I see you. We're glad to have you from the ancient city of Zaria this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria, and good morning, Kingsley.
Okay, but as well begin the conversation with you, the Zoom connection is crisp at this time. You have heard the story, you've heard the reports, that namely of the 44 bills to amend the Constitution for a fifth time, 35 of them have been passed by 27 state houses of assembly, and unfortunately of the 35 that have been passed and have been transmitted to the President for assent, the bills intended to grant autonomy to local governments, a critical tier of government, those bills have fallen through. Is this another missed opportunity?
In fact, a very serious missed opportunity, because if you look back into time, this is the fourth attempt by the National Assembly to amend the Constitution. And of all the attempts to amend the Constitution that will grant local government autonomy, this last attempt is the most robust attempt, because it captures not only giving local government legislative autonomy and financial and administrative autonomy, it also recognizes certain key structures. You know, in government, there is the enshrinement of the principles of checks and balance. So in the local government, what guarantees checks and balance is the recognition of the office of the Auditor General for local government. Now, this is the first attempt in the amendment of the Constitution since 1999 that recognizes the role of the Office of the Auditor General for local government and its responsibilities. And also this attempt also captures the functions and the role of the Local Government Service Commission in terms of seeking and sourcing requisite manpower that will be working at the local government. So this is not just a missed opportunity. This is a very, very, very sad, event in the history of local government. And unfortunately, this truncates all the successes and the gains made from the 1976 reform to local government under the Obasanjo-Yar'Adua administration, which ushered in the 1979 Constitution, to the 1984-85 Dasuki Committee report and the successes of that report, to the successes made in the application of the Civil Service Reform 1988-89, application of the Civil Service Reform to local government by the Unwosu Committee, and then the Oyeyiko Committee of 1989, which developed a scheme of service for local government, and then the political reform that took place in 1989-92 that ushered in democracy, full-blown democracy and autonomy to local government. And of course, under the Obasanjo regime and under the from 1999, Obasanjo set up the 11-man technical committee led by Nupe Ndayako, who died and then passed it on to Liman Chiroma. Again, all of these gains have been truncated. So we now have local government that are departments of the Ministry for Local Government in each state. And this accounts for a lot of the ungoverned spaces that you have. This accounts for the myriads of crises that you have in our society because the local governments have been stifled, the gains that have been made over the years have been lost, and the local governments are mere units and departments of the Ministry of Local Government. And they rarely function. In fact, one of the serious gains of this last effort at amending the Constitution is to grant local government legislative powers, in that when they pass their budget, they do not have to submit it to the Ministry for Local Government, and then in the end takes it to the Public Account Committee of the State House of Assembly, and then the State House of Assembly again will do oversight function on the local. All these bottlenecks are attempts to stifle the local government. And one significant thing also is that Section 162 of the Constitution, which talks about the joint account, is taken out of this recent amendment. So local governments now are, by this amendment, are supposed to have their own accounts, as you had in between 1988 to 1992. Local governments were receiving their subvention directly from the central bank. And, this serves as, a benchmark for measuring the successes of local government. So the current scenario that we have is a scenario in which the accounts, the joint accounts of local government are stifled, they're taken away. Governors come in the guise of joint projects and force the local government chairman to sign checks and, sign these monies out. So they are only giving security votes. And I can tell you with all sincerity, I've gone around all local governments in the north, and I'm telling you, this is exactly what happens. The local government sign checks and then sign this money in the guise of joint project, and then give the money out to the Ministry for Local Government. And they only get salaries and security vote, and that is all. So there's nothing for development, nothing for service delivery, and nothing to provide basic services to the various communities, health-wise, primary education, security, and and a host of agricultural needs of the rural areas in our community. And this is a very sad event. However, I think there is still an opening for us that needs to be exploited. We need to go back to the Supreme Court to define exactly what Section 7 of the 1999 Constitution says about the status of local government. And Section 162, subsection 36789, what it means, because it says that the National Assembly can legislate on resource allocation to state, to federal government, to state, and the local government. What does that mean? In terms of giving us what is the status of local government, because a lot of these things borders on the status
we
of local
get your
government.
point, and of course we'll get back to you in the course of the program. So much you have actually said, and then you have said that it's not just a missed opportunity but a sad development. And luckily we have a former speaker here with us, Honorable Abdullahi. I'll quickly come to you. I'm sure you heard Professor Issa and his submissions as regards, local government autonomy. I believe that you have or you know some of the reasons why most of the houses of assembly, 27 of them, are rejecting local government autonomy. Could you let us know some of these reasons?
I think the key reason, thank you very much for this issue, for discussion. I think the main reason for finding ourselves where we are now has to revolve about the issue of bad governance. You see, governance itself has to do with the process of decision making and how such decisions are implemented or not. So fundamentally, we are bedeviled with bad governance over time, and since the advent of democracy, and that has been the issue. Just as Prof has said, if you look at the various steps that local government reform has taken in this country, local government administration, either in terms of administration, political administration, electioneering, thrived and did very well under successive military administration in the country. But since 1999 till date, that we have a civilian administration, and where the issue of constitutionalism has to come into effect as to what the state can do with local government. We have the politician, me, I belong to the political class. I think we have wrongly exploited the constitution to the detriment of the issue of democratic growth at local government level. What we have now is completely unacceptable, and we need to take urgent steps to reverse the ugly trend in the country.
Abarare, what are your thoughts on what's playing out?
Well, thank you for the question. I will come from the legal mind as a lawyer. I think I will agree totally with the position and postulation of the Prof, especially when it comes to the constitutionality or otherwise of what is happening now. The scenario is so bad, so much that the Constitution, 1999 Constitution as amended, given to us, does not speak the law as it should be, especially as it relates to local governments. Section 7.1 creates local government and says that a local government shall function as an existing organ of government, like a third tier of government. When you have the national government, you have the state, and you also have the local government. When you have a local government, of course, you should be able to function as a government. Functionality as a government is legislative. You also have judicial. You also have financial. You have all autonomies. The same thing that we have even in the FCT. FCT has judiciary. FCT has legislative. If you go to section 300, okay, let me go to section 162, sub 6, like what he said. You created the local government in one breath by giving section 7 down. You now took the power of the local government by section 162.6 by saying that a state joint account shall be operated, and all funds that are designated for local government shall go to the state account, meaning that it is the governor of the state that will have the capacity to dip the hand into the funds of local government. That is not done anyway. Now, attempts that are now being made by the National Assembly is a good one. By sponsoring bill, it's a special bill in line with Section 9. Section 9.2 allows for a special bill, a bill that will be jointly done by both houses in the National Assembly and all state assembly, meaning that it's a special bill, a bill to alter the Constitution. The modus operandi of altering the Constitution has been provided by that Section 9.2, saying that National Assembly will initiate the bill, and which they initiated by saying that they want to give the states and the local government autonomy financially, administratively, judicially, and otherwise. They sponsored the bill as it should be done, and they sent it for approval by resolution into the states, only for these states to come back and say, no, it cannot be done. So that sounds very unethical to me, meaning that some people are out there, I'm talking of the players in the governance, they are out there circumventing the reality of local government autonomy. I will refer to the case of governor of Ekiti State, and Olaban Olubumi. He went to the Supreme Court over the same issue. That was in 2017. In fact, it was reported in Nigeria Weekly Law Report. It is part 1551, where the Supreme Court was saying that any attempt by any governor in removal and usurpation of the powers of local governments by going into their finances or by also removing them and appointing caretaker committee is a judicial recklessness. Executive, I'm sorry. They call it executive recklessness, meaning that anything that will be done by the governor to make sure that local government does not function as it is supposed to be functioning is an executive recklessness. So what we are finding ourselves in now is a mess, and we need to clean it. Cleaning it by way of sponsoring another bill in no distant time and appealing to the conscience of the governors by telling them that the essence of Section 7 is to have a territorial government. Local government is the closest government to the people, to the grassroots. They do a lot of things. Will you want to be the one that will be monitoring the park? That is part of the functions of the local government, monitoring the park. Sanitary. All these, house, what do you call it, inspection. They are the one that do all these things. Collection of taxes in the market. Do you want to do that as governor? So it calls for serious consideration.
Aguirre, you know, some governments, you know, state governments are saying that, you know, the reason they're against the local government autonomy is the fact that it does not conform with what true federalism is. So I would like you to tell us what exactly is true federalism, because some people have said it just involves two tiers of government. It should be two, just the federal and the state. The state takes over. After all, the states have the right to create more local governments if they want to and all of that. So they should oversee and, you know, be in charge. So could you let us know what your position is as regards that point of view?
Federalisms, asymmetric and symmetric, will apply in that context. True federalism, lo and behold, is between the federal and the states. Yes, that is true federalism. The reason why local government does not conform with the concept of true federalism is what I just told you. Section 7 created it, and Section 162 takes away from it. You know, local government being the government in existence before any other government. They are the government that are close to the people. So what do you want more in true federalism? I agree completely with you that local government cannot feature in true federalism sense because they are being chaired by the chairman as against the governor. Governor is the governor of the state. If you are under the governor of the state as a local government chairman, of course you cannot do any law that will be contrary to the laws of the state. You understand? So true federalism, if you're talking about that angle, from the asymmetric side of it, it doesn't play anything. But when you're talking of symmetrics, local government should feature. Like I said, local government is the government of the people, the core people. They are the government that are very close to the people in the villages. So if you don't allow them to function in the true functionality of a government, it will not sound very well into the governance.
I think if I may come in on the issue that you have asked Barrister, do we even have the issue of true federalism? What we can discuss at any level is comparative federalism. Just not to argue the point, as long as we have a constitutional provision that this is how our governance should be, well, the issue of true federalism is out of it. The local government has stipulated in the Constitution how they should function. Giving them the necessary tools to function is what we are debating. You see, I believe that participation is part of good governance. We, in this last amendment that that we are discussing about now, I think all of us as a citizen we let our local government down by not putting pressure on the governors to give way, especially when we noticed that they were negotiating a way out of the issue. The state assemblies negotiated with the governors that they want autonomy too. And at that point, the issue of local government autonomy and state assembly autonomy became the two that was exchanged. And at that point, that with the Nigerian citizens, all over the civil society, we kept quiet. And this is the result.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Bello Abdullahi. Two quick points before we return to Professor Isa. I mean, it should be laughable in the process of constitutional amendment, where, for instance, we are saying that we should appeal to the state governors, or should have appealed to state governors to allow local government autonomy. I say it's laughable because the Constitution does not provide any role for state governors in the process of constitutional amendment. We know that they are an interest group, but of course, we are saying this because it discloses the overwhelming influence of state governors over state houses of assembly, which have a role in the process of constitutional amendment. Because the two-stage process, actually three-stage process, the National Assembly passes a bill and then transmits the bill to the various state houses of assembly, 36 of them. If 24 make their returns, positive returns on those bills, it means that, of course, the National Assembly gets it, and then third stage, the bill goes to the president for its assent. If he withholds his assent, of course, then we're back again to the opportunity for a veto by the National Assembly. Nowhere are state governors mentioned, but as I said, it's indicative of the power of state governors over the state houses of assembly. The other point, Professor Issa, I would like us to drill into this briefly. Agbarire has raised what he refers to as the tension in some provisions of the Constitution. For instance, it says Section 7 is in tension with Section 162. Section 7 guarantees democratically elected local governments. Section 162 provides for local government and state joint accounts. But some would argue, if we were to discover, as we say in law, in the interpretation of statutes, to discover the intention of the framers of the Constitution, that this tension was not intended at all. It was intended that, yes, don't have dictators in local governments, let them be democratically elected. And then the idea of a state-local government joint account, if you read other provisions, including the fourth schedule to the Constitution that talks about the functions of local governments, the intention was that local governments themselves would not be working at cross purposes with the states, that they would be working jointly together. That's to say, in terms of economic development of the local governments, in terms of economic development of the states. But this appears to have been abused, rather, some would say wantonly, since 1999. And that, of course, this is part of the consequence that we are still seeing today, that states are unwilling to let go of their stranglehold on local governments. Prof.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. First, you see, on the issue of the challenges of the constitutional provisions, if you go to chapter 6 and section 130 to about 160, which talks about executive powers, you will see that the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, talks about the executive power of the president and his role, and talks about the executive power of the governor and his role, and how to remove the president and how to remove the governor, but did not mention the executive power of the local government chairman and how to remove the chairman and what is to be done about that. That also created a big gap, a wide gap in terms of, what are the status of local government. Again, let me make some clarification here. There are no true type federalism. These are concepts that are in abstraction. They are not in any academic even lexicon. Federalism is federalism. You can only have comparative federalism. And no one true country practice one form of federalism that is universal. There are no universal benchmark for federalism. Each federal country is practicing federalism based on its history, its past, and the constituent unit of the society that makes up that country, especially the history of the society that come together to form that country also. So there's no true, this concept of true federalism is a concept that evolved in the lexicon of journalists in the media in Nigeria. But if you look at academic lexicon, there's nothing like true federalism. Federalism is federalism anywhere in the world. So you can talk about, like the speaker said, comparative federalism. What is this country doing that is different from ours? And what are we doing that's different? And what can we learn from others to improve our federalism? Now, the local government predates the state, predates the federal government. In fact, there were reforms of 1910 in the establishment of the local government. There were reforms and efforts to make the local government function. Then there were native authorities, and they evolved. In fact, the attempt to grant independence to Nigeria started with giving the regional autonomy from the Richard's Constitution 1947. There were attempts to grant regional powers to the regional government by giving them powers to grant, autonomy to local government also. So independence started with granting autonomy to government, regional government like states, and then the regional governments who were given powers to give power to the local government. And that was the basis of the Northeastern Reform to Local Government 1950, in the Southwestern region 1952, and in the North 1954. So you can see a pattern, a trend of reforms to boost the status of local government. Now, bringing it fast forward to where we are today, the Section 162 is not a mist, neither is it an attempt to stifle the local government. It was done in modeling that there's a federal allocation committee at the federal level, where the federal government shares resources accruing to both the federal, state, and local government. Now, the state is expected to also superintend or supervise the allocation of resources accruing to local government in a territory. The federal government does not have to come down to the local government and share this money. And there have been precedents. Long before 1999, this practice had been there, and the state only share what accrues to local government in a territory, using population, using enrollment to primary school, using internal effort at internally generated revenue, using a whole lot of geography, and so on and so forth. There are set criteria and equality. There are certain percentages that are shared on equality, and there are certain percentages are shared on revenue effort, on enrollment to school, on population, and so on and so forth. And so there's no myth about it. However, the challenge is that subsequently from 1999 to date, especially from 2003, the governors found a way of, creating fictitious projects, fertilizer distribution, and so on, tractor hiring and purchasing, and so on and so forth, and come up and then siphon all of this money to a point today that there are local governments that don't even get anything apart from salaries, and apart from security votes, and they just get 2 million, 3 million naira for security votes. And for me, it's like a way of bribing the governors. And Kingsley, one of the major challenge, and if any serious effort is to be taken, is that political parties that we have today are not parties in the true essence of what we call political parties. They are political associations. And this is where the problem starts. The governors influence who is the choice of chairman in the local government, who goes in to be councillors. And so they go in as puppets, not direct representative of the people. Of course, there are, shadow processes that tend to show that elections takes place. But the real choice of candidates are not the choice of the people, but the choice of elite and stakeholders in the community. And the same thing happened at the State House of Assembly. Imagine the State House of Assembly approve autonomy for judiciary and legislatures, so that their charges will come at first charge to the. Is that not bias? Is that not a tint of bias or prejudice, that the legislatures found out that they need autonomy, and they granted autonomy to the judiciary, state judiciary, and to the state legislature, but denied the local government? And if you go back to the President's Executive Order 10, that Executive Order 10 was supposed to, take care of both legislative autonomy, state judicial autonomy, and autonomy to the local government. So why did the State House of Assembly grant autonomy to the legislature, to the state judiciary, and deny the local government? Because there are certain interests and powers within the executive corridors of the state government that who do not want the local government to enjoy this financial autonomy. And a lot of the damage to local government autonomy comes from the existence of the State Ministry for Local Government. Not until we counsel State Ministry for Local Government and in place put directorate of inspection, because the idea of State Ministry for Local Government started as a directorate of local government inspection. Not until we counsel the ministry and do the needful, the local government autonomy will continue to elude our society and will continue to be a mirage. And so we need to now start thinking of, for me, no amendment will work now, because this is the fourth attempt. The first attempt did not even leave the National Assembly. So the second, third, fourth attempt left the National Assembly to the state. So this is the third failed attempt at the State House of Assembly. We must just go to the Supreme Court for clarity.
Going to the Supreme Court. Thank you so much, Professor Issa, for the points that you have made so far. I see that you're passionate about, this issue, and, for every one of us in this studio, I mean, our guests, you seem to be in favor of local government autonomy. But I'll quickly come to you, Honorable Abdullahi. Why is there this agitation, for local government autonomy? People say that because state governors are reckless, with the money, and, not handing down the cash they should and all of that to the local governments to function effectively. What is the guarantee that if we have local government autonomy, that this local government will still function effectively? Because, the issue of corruption in this country, has really eaten deep. And some people think that it is better to have states look after these local governments, and then instead of looking for local government autonomy, find a way to check the state governments and ensure that, whatever it is that should be handed down to local governments are handed down to them, and they're also effectively monitored. What's your take as regards this opinion?
You see, my dear sister, thank you for this. We will address this matter, or I will rather address this matter through this, issue again, through this, focus. You see, what is the purpose of governance? Until we get it right as to what exactly is the purpose of governance, no amount of amendment or, issue of the kind of constitution that we operate that will work for this country. The purpose of governance is simply for the well-being and welfare of the people. Good governance. And how can we attain this good governance? Is by ensuring that our official state actors that seek to be elected has to, embrace or to be imbibed with the spirit of, the concept of good governance. That is, governance for public good as against self. If most of these governors and the state assembly legislators are imbibed, the concept of good governance, that is, for every action they will do or they will conduct in office is for public good, this crisis will not have arise as it is today. So, until we get to that point, where those who seek to be councillors, chairman of local government councils, state assembly legislators, the governors, deputy governors, the senators have done their best by proposing this amendment. They have contributed to the issues of good governance. But at that state level, our recruitment method, the Prof has mentioned it, the way and manner we recruit people into political office space is very faulty. I was talking to my imam here, Barrister Imam. I said, now, if I hold a PhD in engineering or the best degree whatsoever in any field, apart from law, can I be appointed as a judge of any scale in this country, of any court in this country of recognition? He said no. But the issue of public executive or legislative governance, anybody, when I say anybody, can be a speaker. Anybody can be Senate president. Anybody can be president of this country. Anybody can be governor of your state. This is the problem we have in the country.
So you agree that, even the local government autonomy may not actually bring the dividend of democracy?
The autonomy is good. Let me cite an example. Around 2007 or thereabout, or 2008 or 2009, I know my own local government, the then chairman of the local government, the federal government released a windfall for all the local governments. The governor of my state at that time gave all the local government their money 100%. And you know what happened in my local government, okay, where I come from? The local government chairman then was doing road. They're still there now for people to see. Just in recent time, there was local governance at local level, road being constructed by local government, just in recent time. But can that be said to have happened all over the country? No. All those gains are lost today, all over the country. Just Prof have said. You see,
a favorite example of Professor Issa, whenever we're discussing local government issues, has to do with the stellar performance of local governments under the military administration, particularly of Babangida, where local governments had autonomy, and they performed wonders. If you were in Lagos, for instance, Ikeja local government, Mushin local government, Lagos Island local government, and elsewhere in different parts of the country. I'm sure Professor Issa remembers this example that he always cites about what local governments did at that time. But let's come back again so that we clarify some of the fundamentals in terms of what the Constitution already provides and how the constitutional provisions have either been misapplied or abused, particularly at the state level. But Professor Issa tells us that, yes, the Constitution provides for democratically elected government, Section 7, and then in the executive powers for the states and the federation, those powers are stipulated for the president, vice president, appointment or election and removal. The same thing for the state governors, but that you don't have any for local governments. Fair enough, but we should also recognize that the Constitution has created a window by donating powers to the state houses of assembly to make laws regarding the local governments. That is the coming into existence of local governments, their functions, their duties, in addition, of course, to what has been stipulated in the Constitution. Earlier, I talked about the fourth schedule to the Constitution. Now, if you like, that would be like the basic minimum. Now, by donating powers to the state houses of assembly, some would argue, is to enable the state houses of assembly factor in their various peculiarities. Sokoto, the issues might be different from Borno, from Enugu, from Edo, Bayelsa. Look at your local peculiarities and let this be the fulcrum of the composition of the constitution of your local governments without, for instance, provision for tenure. So, but we have seen over the years the agitation for tenure. Lagos, for instance, now has 4 years for local governments. Some have 2 years, some have 3 years. Most, since 1999, have been so-called caretaker committees. Where has this abuse come from? To the fact that we are unable, because the Constitution cannot give us everything. So how do we get back to say, look, let's pay adherence, as it were, to the fundamentals already provided by the Constitution. The Constitution did not envisage the kind of chaos or misgovernance that we are seeing today at the local government administration level. Agbarere.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kingsley. Yes, I totally agree with you in one point. The point that our constitution cannot be perfect. No constitution under the sun is perfect. Even the American constitution, as good as it is, does not even cover everything. But in Nigeria, we seem to forget that constitution is also the language of the people. Constitution is our wish. Constitution is what we want. We want local government by creating it. That is by area, and it bothers me, disturbs me. And I can see that all of us, the speakers today, all of us are in tandem, we're in sync when it comes to the favoritism that we are giving to local government. So it means that there should be something that should be read in between the lines. Between the lines, number one is that local government should not be taken away, just like how we took away the powers of the emirs, of the kings, of the obas. Well, how we relegated them. That is why we are saying that don't relegate the local government. You know, those days, all the powers belong to those people. But we took it from them. I remember in my place, In Ilorin, they will say, okay, where they put the prisoners, the prison yards. We have a name for it in Okekura. So when they say that it is the emir that will send it and it's close to the emir palace, you can see virtually in everywhere in the north. You see that a prison yard used to be close to emir palace. See Suleja for that, for instance. As you are leaving the emir palace, you see the prison yard. So those things that happened those days means that we took over the power from the emirs. Local government, like what Professor said the other time, he said native authority. We have a time when we are applying, when we're using native authority. That one also eluded us. Then we created local government. I will come to the issue of Babangida, like you said the other time. Why local government was functioning well that time is because they were under the nose of the military man. A man that would not even allow you to sleep if in your home, if you misappropriate or mismanage the resources that were given to you. Now, let me now come to answer your question. The question is this, that why do we fail? Why don't we allow that thing to happen? We didn't allow it to happen fully because local government would tend to mismanage any monies given to them. Constitution is right by section 162 sub 6. It's right because the people there, they will just say there are so many ghost workers. Let me come from that. I will just say, okay, from my house now, 20 people or 100 people, put them under the payroll of the local government. At the end of the day, those money will be going to the chairman of the local government. So many things. They collect a lot of, what do you call it, taxes from the people in the market. They hit it themselves. A lot of mismanagement were going on there. But instead of now not giving them their autonomy as it should be, why don't we have another mechanism that will check their excesses? I agree also that by putting their money in the account of the state joint account, it means that governors of those states are appointed as administrators and supervisors to ensure that any monies that goes to you as a local government should be used and judiciously applied. Because how can I just release money to you and I'm doing the same job you are doing? Governors will be doing the same jobs as much as local governments. So if you come from that angle, you will see that yes, they don't, with due respect to them, they don't deserve to be given that financial fully. With due respect, that is the area that I will see my own differential. But if we can be able to manage and check them properly, then they will function. See the way the states are now agitating with the federal government. For instance, River State. River State said that the federal government should not be collecting taxes in their place because by tax laws, they have the right to collect tax. You understand? We are getting there to federalism as you postulated the other time, that everybody will be on his own toes when you know your boundaries and your own existential capacity.
Abarere, thanks for the points that you have raised. But before we go back to Professor Issa, I would like you to address this point. One of our guests this morning, and this is a fact that we also know, has raised the issue about the recruitment of persons to superintend the local governments. We find, for instance, that in a good number of instances, local government elections are a sham.
Sham, complete.
Chairman, vice chairman, and councillors are handpicked. And if these are not your best, why then would you expect a standard of conduct or a standard of performance contrary to what you are describing, that they could collect levies, rates, and so on and so forth, and line their pockets, have all kinds of appointments, and that's one leg of it. In other words, a situation has been created for the mismanagement of the local government administration through the interference of an overseeing authority that handpicks the cronies to run that. Second leg, are we going to discountenance the role of accountability? We have the EFCC, we have the ICPC. So, but there are very few cases of prosecution at that level. So, how would you respond to this and still, for instance, insist on your position that local governments might misuse or abuse financial autonomy?
Sir, before you
No,
go in,
just,
I'm coming, sir. I'm coming, sir. I'm coming, sir. I'm coming, sir.
Hang on a second. Let him respond, and then we'll take it from
Yes,
there. Yes,
take it from this point. I will respond to your my position and your own question further by saying that if we want financial accountability, prudence, there should also be checks, and those checks cannot come from the federal government. That is the reason why they put them under the nose and the eyes of their states' governments. It can't come from the federal government because they are far from the federal government. You know, local government is within the states, under the watch of the governor. So the only way you can check them is still to put them under the governor. The problem we are having is that you give the money of a robber to another robber. Yes, you want to give money to somebody. You are saying that this person, I don't want you to spend this money anyhow. But when you give it to another person, that one is also the worst. So how do we do? That is why I will come to your postulation that EFCC, ICPC, all those regulatory authorities, they should have their grip on both state government that they are doing and also the local government. They should not be insulated. So this is my own position over it. As we are giving the position on the pro, we should also give the position on the con. Because if you give them the latitude and say, okay, they should also have their freedom as they want to have it, they will mismanage it. I know that.
Honorable,
I think at this point, I beg to differ from Barrister Imam. You see, if we agree upon your position, what that means is that the federal government will not give a state allocation to state governors, because most of the state governors are guilty of corruption too. But so I'm coming, sir. You see, you cannot say because of the fear that elected local government officials will be corrupt, then what is due to them by the constitution, you will not give it to them. The president and Commander-in-Chief, President Buhari, did not say that any governor will be corrupt, so their state allocation should not be given to them. That is why we have ICPC and EFCC to checkmate excesses of public state officials. Let me give you an instance. In my state, I don't know of other states. In the past, there are some local government chairmen that were tried by ICPC or EFCC and were jailed for corruption. A particular local government was, putting the local government allocation into its personal account, which is an offense. And by the time the people, that is why I'm still going back to the issue of participation. Our people at the grassroots, all of us, because you have to raise the matter. ICPC or EFCC cannot go to local government level to know what is happening. It's we, the people, that should participate. We know where we elect people and we just go back to sleep. It's part of the problem. We should checkmate. We should put people under the government under pressure at local government level, at state level. We should put them under pressure on the issue of accountability and transparency.
All right, Professor Issa, I'm sure you want to respond to, the issues that have come up right here in the studio. Honorable Abdullahi seems to disagree with Agbari, as regards not granting full financial autonomy to local governments because of mismanagement. Because I mentioned it earlier, because some people think that it's better to give it to the state governors, after all, they're just 36, than having 774 people have to manage this money and then maybe difficult to check. Why not just check the governors and ensure that, they do the needful? Do you agree with this point? And then, Agbari also made a point, which some school of thought also agree with, that the reason why local government functioned effectively during the military administration is because they knew that they couldn't mismanage funds at that time, compared to what happens now. That's another point. Then thirdly, don't you think that it is a question of having the people, talking about the people of Nigeria, in the local government, taking responsibility as regards, electing those who should lead them? Because if the local government chairmen are actually elected by the people, I'm sure they would want to deliver to the people instead of having the governors handpick them. So please respond to these issues. Professor Issa.
Thank you very much once more. I think I'd like to respond to the issue from this perspective. First, let's understand one thing. The argument that because local governments will be corrupt, therefore you will not give them autonomy, does not hold water. again, you see, going back, like I said, in terms of the principles of federalism, in Nigeria, for example, the local government predates the federal government and the state government. And in Nigeria, it is the federal government that created the states, not the states creating the federal government. If you look at the trajectory of history, for example, in the United States, it is the states that created the federal government. While in Nigeria, it is the federal government that created the state. But the local government of all these tiers of government, the local government predates the state. So anything we want to do, we must factor in and appreciate where we are coming from, where we are, and where we want to be. Now, taking that into perspective, the argument that local government, where are we not seeing corruption? Where is corruption not visible in all the tiers of government? There's corruption at the federal level. Look at the records of court judgments that have been passed. Look at a lot of people that are cooling their heels in prison from federal government, from state. And like the speaker said, many people are in prison who are past or elected officials or officers of local government. They are in prison or have served one sentence or jail terms of the other. Now, the problem with the local government is that there is a system of internal auditing check. Now, what they do is they step the internal auditor aside and they do not allow him to function. And it is the internal auditor that checks the excesses of the chairman and the executive committee of the local government. Also, at the local government level, there's what we call audit alarm committee, which set an alarm and reports it to the House of Assembly and reports it to the governor to inform them of abuses. Again, this committee has not been allowed to function. Now, above all else, there is the Office of the Auditor General. They are supposed to be doing quarterly inspection, biannual inspection, and annual report. The state governments have not allowed this Office of the Auditor General to function in many years since we attained democracy. And these are the structures that we use in ensuring probity and accountability at the local government level. So there's just the local government does not operate in a vacuum without certain state rules and regulation. The idea that the local government, the State House of Assembly, make laws on its functions, establishment, composition, structure, and funding has to do with the funding that accrues to local government from the state. The state are supposed to also be funding local government, not tampering with their funds. 10% of internally generated revenue of the state government are supposed to accrue to local government. No state, majority of the state don't give this money to local government. Instead, they even divert the federally allocated funds. And for me, not until we take governors accountable and we deal with this situation by law and to ensure that you, the state governor, this money that has been given to your state to share, what happened to the local government? What happened to these funds? How were they shared? We need to ask questions that the Constitution in Section 162, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 states that in the joint account section 6 and 7, you share this money to local. How have you been doing it? What accrues to the local government? By the time we ask this question, and EFCC and ICPC and the NFIU do the needful, take governors to task, we will not solve this problem because amendment will not do it, except, like I said, the only hope we have is to go back to Supreme Court. For me, 4 attempted amendments did not deliver Uhuru. Therefore, the only place we can get judgment and fairness is the Supreme Court, where it will clearly tell us what is the status of local government within the framework of the Constitution. How do we deal with the local government? I am sure the Supreme Court will be very dispassionate and clear about what we need to do. I have hope in the Supreme Court. That is my last hope, that the local government can only be properly defined for us by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will not adjudicate on matter not before it. There have been attempts to take this matter to the Supreme Court, but not in the right manner. But the Supreme Court had already given us a hint in previous judgment, from 2006 judgment to up to the 2018 judgment. We need to go back to the Supreme Court to streamline all the judgment of the Supreme Court so that it tells us what is the status of the local government today and how do we deal with the local government. What is the role of the state legislatures and the state governors in dealing directly with the local government? And I believe that
Professor Issa, sorry, we're having to pause you because we're taking a short break. But just to remind our viewers, the essence of this conversation, it isn't about local government autonomy for the sake of autonomy. There are a number of developmental programs and projects that local governments are supposed to undertake, but which they are not enabled to undertake right now. For instance, we complain about primary health care centers. If you are in the urban area, you are in the rural area, when was the last time you visited a well-equipped primary health care center? It takes the Honorable Minister of Health to come on Good Morning Nigeria and at other fora to be talking about how the federal government is trying to instigate the creation of 10,000 primary or revive 10,000 primary health care centers throughout the countries. A number of the roads in your neighborhoods that are poorly maintained, drains that are poorly maintained, these are ordinarily responsibilities of local governments. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Sportybet sponsors coverage of the German Bundesliga.
All right, welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. And yes, we're still discussing the constitutional amendment and local government autonomy. And our guests are still very much with us. Professor Issa, was talking, before we went on the break, and we still have Mustafa Agbari with us right here and Honorable Abdullahi. So quickly, I'll just go to Mustafa Agbari, because we've talked about, you heard Professor Issa talking about going to the Supreme Court just so that we can have our way as regards local government autonomy and all of that. I'm particularly concerned about, besides the EFCC and the ICPC, we know that there's a limit to how far they can go. And you made mention of the fact that the local governments are under the governors, under the state governors. They see them, they know exactly, what they are doing. They are the ones who can actually check and tell you if they are doing what they should do or not. So how do we go about checking people in governance? Because for me, that is key.
Yes.
This financial recklessness we're talking about, this issue of governors assuming full powers and not wanting state governments to function effectively. Is it not possible that you could have local governments have, autonomy administratively, financially, and then you also have mini gods too, yes, as local government chairman, who would now probably look at a particular ward and now focus on that ward and ignore other wards and all that? How do we check governance in general in this country to ensure that the people of the country actually get dividends of democracy?
Yes, that would make me to be in alliance with the Mr. Speaker, with what he said earlier, that do we even understand what governance is? Governance is service to people, security, welfare of the people. Do we have good people as in the corridor of power? Do we have people who are nurtured for power and for governance? We don't have. Everybody, I mean, we just come and become governor. Everybody will become president. Anybody can become local government chairman. And that is why we are having the crisis of today. Because money is our number one issue. That's why we are having financial recklessness here and there. I think beyond the issue of the local government crisis, Prof just said that, well, state governors are also corrupt, even presidency corrupt, ministers corrupt. Yes, beyond that, it is for us to search our soul and be patriotic about the country. Because truth be said, I know what happened in local governments. I'm not saying that the constitution should not be entrenched. Constitution, yes, and powers of the states and the local government, everything, let autonomy be given to them. But truth be said, local governments, they are doing a duplication of what states, all state governments are doing duplication of what some local governments should be doing within their domain, and they don't do it. You know a lot of local government chairmen who only enrich themselves by going into that place. Now, what are the checks and balances? Is by entrenching more of those watching eagle-eyed institutions like EFCC, like ICPC. Let them also go down into the basis, not be looking at the top, not only the top. Go to them as well, the local government. Check their financials, check them, and also hold them accountable. Like he said that, yes, a number of the local government chairmen were prosecuted in his place. How many of them have been prosecuted nationwide? We have 774 local governments. Knowing that tells you that you have 774 people at the helms of the affairs of the local government. How many of them could you even be traced? So that is one. The issue of Supreme Court, I go into that too. Supreme Court is the final arbiter when it comes to judicial interpretation of anything. Yes, let's go to the Supreme Court, it's better. I told you that, I just cited one authority for you the other time, Governor of Ekiti and Olubumi. The governor of Ekiti State remove the local council and put the caretaker. And you know what angered some of these governors? I'm not saying governors are insulated. They are also corrupt. Many of them are, we know them. But he removed the local council and said, what are you even doing? You guys don't do anything. I will be giving you money because of financial prudence. And they went to the Supreme Court over the matter. The matter got there. And this is what the Supreme Court said. I told you in 2017, just around the corner. It is reported, Nigerian Weekly Law Report 1551. They said that it's an executive recklessness for the governor just enter into the domains of the local government and remove the chairman and appoint anybody. You understand me? So we can still go back to the Supreme Court to delineate the functionalities of governor vis-a-vis the local councils so that we get it right. That is, until we do that, I will agree totally with the prof, we can get it. But I know, before I leave this space, that a lot needs to be done when it comes to financial, what do you call it, recklessness of all these arms of government, especially executive arms of government. Yes.
Okay, Agbare, thank you very much for your position. I have a little concern, but it's also a very big concern. And I'm not sure who will be in a better position or in the best position to address this. But let me give it back to Prof. And I will come back to the speaker, former speaker of the Kogi State House of Assembly. The Supreme Court had long ago decided, upholding the provision of Section 7 of the Constitution, that the local government system is guaranteed on the basis of democratic elections. And yet, in different parts of the country, we still have the prevalence of caretaker committees that are dissolved at the whims of the state governor. And then you also have local governments that are suspended almost so willfully by the state governors. There is a live Supreme Court decision. In other words, that decision has not been reversed by the Supreme Court itself. So why has there been this willful disobedience of that order? What guarantee might there then be, unless, of course, the federal government now steps in to say, okay, we will enforce the decision. If somebody then goes to court to further delineate the powers, the concurrence of powers between states and local governments, just as you have been urging, Professor Issa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinsley. I want to also draw attention that this is not the first time that this problem has reoccurred. In 1985, the Dasuki Committee report, vehemently opposed this idea of caretaker committee or sole administrator or interim management committee or whatever name they chose to call them, and asked government in that report to completely ban and abhor such practices. Now, it did not occur again until after 1999, where governors, sack and appoint caretaker or interim committee and so on. Now, the problem starts from the fact that with every transition committee, the transition from military to civil rule, the local governments have been made very important and significant. You need to contextualize this. Governors are interested in having foothold and total control of their local government because the power to exercise as a governor is determined by the amount of control you have for your local government. You are looking into the future, you are looking into election. The whole problem is about election and how a governor assures his control of the territory of the state in terms of politics. So governors are interested in handpicking who becomes what chairman and councillor, especially as foot soldiers for election. Now, unfortunately, governors get worried the moment they find opposition parties, in control of certain local governments where they are not the main party in control. So they get jittery and they get worried. That is why if you look, every election conducted by governors in the local government is the ruling party of the state that wins everything as if there are no opposition. And that tells you clearly what is obtainable on the ground. Now, with this intervention by the Supreme Court, in fact, right from, the 2006 judgment between Lagos State, Abia State, and the federal government in 2006 judgment, you note that, and up until the 2018, there have been about 3 or 4 Supreme Court intervention in this matter. So what we need to do is to take the governors to clean us after they step aside, because the governors are refusing to comply to Supreme Court judgment because of, their what you call their cover, that as governors they are not. Please, Barrister Mustafa, help me out. That the governors have a legal cover, and so they are not, they are not liable to be prosecuted until when they step aside. So we must immediately, the governor step aside for violating the decision of the Supreme Court. We take him to court, and then we find him guilty and jail him for refusing to comply with Supreme Court judgment. That way, it will send signal to next person who is abusing his immunity as governor to not uphold the sanctity of the rule of law. So after stepping aside or stepping down as governor or speaker or whatever, we take him to the process of adjudication so that they learn from it and know that they cannot be reckless with what the Constitution demands. And you see, the Constitution in Section 7 is clear. There's no ambiguity. It says the system of local government council through democratically elected local government council is by this Constitution guaranteed. So the Constitution guarantees only democratically elected local government council. It does not tolerate anything outside. And so governors now, when the tenure of a chairman expires, this is the new antics. They delay elections, appoint caretaker committee, and then they waste time claiming that they have no money to conduct elections. So they delay and appoint caretaker committee for 1 year, 2 years, and then they now conduct election and then say, okay, they make sure they permutate and waste time, play with who succeeds and their parties succeed. And then when they are sure that the permutation is correct, then they conduct the election.
And when they conduct the election, 99.999% of victory goes to the party in power in the state, which of course also led to agitation for the scrapping of the state independent electoral commissions, because many argued that the I in the SIEC is meaningless in their opinion. That's to say that the state independent electoral commissions aren't independent at all. But let's return to the studios. Honorable Bello Abdullahi, the main crux of the matter, apart from having access to local government funds, is controlled by the state executive. You are a politician. And many argue that you need local government operatives as your, if you like, your garrison commanders for electoral purposes. So it would appear that state governors have an eye on the next election rather than on governance and development arising from the local governments, and they are more concerned about who can win a local government for them. But if a person is incompetent and there is no development coming through a local government, how effective might that person still be in helping you win elections? Is it part of the so-called political structures that they create all over the place?
Yes, I think I quite agree with the way you put up the question as to we at the state level, most of the governors, manipulate the system at local government level for political gains. But having said this, I quite believe that any governor that is of more public good than SF will don't need to manipulate the local government system to excel. Let me cite a practical example in my state too. When I was part of the state actors, we conducted local government election in which opposition party wins, in a very distant local government election. One councillors, one chairman of local government. The opposition party, we allowed, free and fair, even though the election was conducted under state independent electoral commission when I was in government. And if my governor now says that he wants to, issue of manipulation, getting everything the way he wants, what we put in place at that time was good governance. Give to the people what is due to them. You go into an election, those people will vote for your party. Any of the credible candidates you put in at local government level, they will vote for your party based on what the state government is doing to the community. Good governance, that's the connection. So when the time that I was speaker to, that a particular governor called me and said he wants to, put in this sole administrator, or what do they call him? Caretaker committee. I was challenging him. I called him. I said, I referred him to a court of appeal judgment against my own state, Kogi, that's declared it as void, null, and nullity totally. Kogi, because somebody took Kogi government before that time to court, and it was declared so. Now, what did they do? They changed the name, they changed the connotation from what the law, the court of appeal says, that you cannot do anything to do with caretaker. They say it's now LO. That is a local LO1, LO2, just to beat the law. But just as Professor have said, I think when these people comes out of government, we should be courageous not to take them before the court, because when they know that they will face charges after a tenure of office, when their immunity is gone. The issue of immunity that is being mentioned here now is just the same thing. The provisional constitution, the constitutional provision of issue of joint account was put for purpose of control. Immunity was put in place for purpose of good governance, so that government, those can do their job, but it's being abused. So I believe that when a governor do what is needful of him by ensuring that there's good governance, there will be no need to And finally, this issue we are talking about now has serious impact of national security. It has affected our national security all over the country, because the ungoverned space all over the country now that the criminals, the bandits are taking over is because of the failure of the local government system. It contributed a lot to national security.
True. Well said. Thank you so much, Honorable Abdullahi. Besides security, we already mentioned health. The fact that a lot of things are not working in the country is actually as a result of local governments not functioning. All right. So on the final note now, we're about to rounding off because of time. Agbari, I would like you to give us your final words. And then who exactly has the powers, to take this matter to the Supreme Court?
Yes, thank you. My final thoughts over these crises. Number one is that any assault on the Constitution should be resisted. Any assault. Constitution being the supreme law, the vont es origo, the laws of the land. Nothing supersedes Constitution. So we should resist it. Any governor that is found wanting in circumventing the constitutional provision should be tried at the end of his tenure. That one is settled. Then the issue of going to the Supreme Court. Yes, anybody, you know, Supreme Court, when you are invoking the Supreme Court's power to interpret constitutional provision, the state, I mean, the attorney generals are there of states. They can go to the Supreme Court. Even the local council as well, as a body recognized by the law, can go to the Supreme Court just for the interpretation of the section of the constitutional provision, especially that section 7. That section 7(1) is the spine of anything local government does. It guarantees a democratically elected local council. So on about the state joint account, you can also go to the Supreme Court and tell them that the Supreme Court should also shed more light on how those funds should be utilized. If I have money with you, must you not be accountable for the money that I have with you?
Mustafa Agbarere, legal practitioner with us here in the Abuja studios. We appreciate your incisive comments onto this conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Our deep appreciation also to Honorable Bello Alhaji Abdullahi, former Speaker, Kogi State House of Assembly. We appreciate your candid contributions to this conversation. As always, from the ancient city of Zaria, that is host to Ahmadu Bello University, we appreciate Professor Muhammad Kabir Isa, who joined us via Zoom, and in Mufti from his hideaway in Zaria. Professor Kabir Isa, thanks a lot for being our guest on the program today. Okay, so that's it on Good Morning Nigeria. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 in the morning. As I always say, look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Ian Ray John. Enjoy the rest of the day.